Hello, friends. I'm Kaori, host of the Creative Tech Podcast. This month, I'm in San Francisco attending an AI and startup conference. This is because this podcast that I just started this past March, I also helped out at Takeoff Tokyo 2024, a startup ecosystem conference. What I have learned from this experience is that if you help people and communities and do consistent things on an ongoing basis, it all connects, like doing continuously, consistently. Now, today's video is the recent Tokyo AI for Good meetup in Tokyo, held on August 27 this year, so almost 1 month ago. So here is the panel talk and Q&A session with Artur Kiulian, co-host of this event and co-founder of AI for Good. Let's get started.
So, once again, thanks for coming. I see that some people are still coming in, but thank you for being early and on time. Really appreciate that. And I want to start from explaining the theme, because when I started these kinds of events, I started in San Francisco, where I'm from, where I live there. I'm originally from Ukraine, but I moved to America, and I've been doing startups for a very long time, running venture studio, running nonprofits, and right now I run these kinds of AI for Good events because I truly believe that in the current wave of innovation that is moving really, really fast, and I'm sure that you guys are experiencing that too, I believe that there's not enough conversation about the actual impact, why we're creating that, and what consequences and implications it actually has. So when people ask me, like, why AI for good? Like, is there AI for bad? Like, do people want to create things for bad? Not really. Like, we as a society, we want to create things for good. But sometimes I feel like we don't have a space to actually have these conversations. And right now, there's basically an opportunity for us here as a community, as a local community of Tokyo, to have a productive conversation about this topic. And I want to have that conversation as an interactive experience. So I don't want just for me to talk and for you to listen. I'll be asking you questions, and there will be a Q&A section, and we'll have a more productive discussion that way. So I'll start with kind of like painting the picture of what's currently happening in the world in terms of AI. We all read the news and the articles about AI, and it kind of has this weird dichotomy, the split between people saying that super intelligence will come and destroy us all, the Terminator, the Skynet, the fears, and then the utopian. I kind of call it utopian because people believe that superintelligence, AGI, will come and basically save us all from all the bad things, right? And it kind of looks like this, that there's an apocalypse, the bad things, the fears, and the utopia. And I actually don't believe that people think like that. I believe that the media right now is kind of like shifting our perception to have these fears or have the hype, and it's almost counterproductive because that's not how we feel about things in life. We don't wake up and think, AI will destroy us all, or superintelligence will come and save us all, right? So to make it interactive, how many people in the audience believe that AI will destroy our world and our humanity? Please raise your hand. Okay, we got some people. How about people that believe that AI will come and save us all from all the problems? See, there's not that many people, because the question is actually not how we think about this. Because the reality is somewhere in between. There's lots of fears in the media and in the press, And then there is lots of hype and overhyping of what technology can do. But we live in this reality where we have the practical conversations that are not really, it's not enough of those conversations. Because we don't think about it enough because the media takes our attention into the fears or the hype and all of these things. So that's the purpose of this event, to create more conversations about in the middle between these extreme scenarios. So hopefully that makes sense. Now the question is, why Japan? And why did I come here? Besides, every AI company rushing to Japan and trying to do business here, that's a thing. I'm seeing that as a pattern in Silicon Valley. You may not realize that by being here in Japan, but I'm seeing that, and that's actually the reason why we're going to have the next panel after my keynote, and we're going to discuss, is that a thing? Why this is happening, and what is the reason? What is the cause of that? So, why Japan? I believe that Japanese culture and society is actually very relevant to the theme of AI for good. There are many components that make this society and the culture relevant. One of them is the collectivist culture and the harmony. Wow. It's a completely opposite direction to the individualism of the Western world. In US, the capitalism and individualism is shaping how we build technology and how we approach the consequences, the risks, the regulation, and all of the things that are related to it. Here in Japan, the attitude is different. And that collectivist mindset and the attempt, kind of like the desire and the goal, the objective to achieve harmony is affecting how technology is being built here. The second part is Kaizen, and which literally means change good. And this whole practicality culture is very relevant to AI for good, the consequences, and how we build technology to improve our lives. Because when people ask me, what is good? What does it mean to create technology for good? I often explain it as something to improve our lives, right? Because that's essentially what we want. We don't need just more money or more cars or more buildings. We want to build something that pushes us into a better version of ourselves as a humanity. And that's pretty much, Kaizen and this practicality culture. The third point is the culture of preparedness, which I wasn't aware until I really started digging into it, which is the Bosai. And apparently, there's no even the English word for this, but it literally means prepare for disaster. And because Japanese society lives on the intersection of these different natural disaster phenomena, it makes the mindset to be always prepared and think about the things that you act upon. So that mindset, I believe, is super beneficial in the current AI race because Japanese culture has this innate ability to think about it. Because the Western society kind of moves fast and rushes into that in a gold rush manner, right? We'll figure out, what happens after we break things. In Japan, it's different. So these three components makes me believe that Japan is a perfect place for the AI for good types of conversations. And I hope that this event will spark more conversations around that, and we'll do more of such events. So that was a little introduction. Hopefully that was useful to someone and paints a picture why Japan and why AI for good. Now let's talk about the actual gold rush. We are aware that there's exponential growth of AI technology. There is so much happening. It's almost impossible to stay on top of it. Even I'm AI researcher, AI engineer. For me to stay on top of everything, I literally have to read 100 AI papers, research papers every day, which is impossible. And trust me, I've tried to do that. I didn't succeed. It was too much. And that's the current reality. There's literally hundreds of AI papers published every day, and obviously not all of them useful, but that's current baseline of the speed of innovation. And meanwhile, it's not all useless. You know, the research papers actually get the adoption in the industry. And there is this widespread adoption of AI being integrated into different parts of our society, from healthcare to financial sector to entertainment. It's slowly but surely it's starting to affect our society. And obviously there is this AI race, and big tech, VC firms, and even countries are basically competing for that AI leadership, and sometimes they're prioritizing the speed over safety. So that's the concerns that we should be thinking about when it comes to these big vehicles that are pushing the whole innovation forward. The biggest one is obviously venture capital. Venture capital is such an interesting phenomenon because it's one of those rare vehicles that can push an idea from nothing into some product and then help scale it. It's a very unique form of capital. And usually it's beneficial when the goals align with the actual society goals. And the goals for the venture capital is to return capital. And sometimes it doesn't align. And this is where things start breaking. So the question to the audience, you all are aware of ChatGPT, right? And ChatGPT was this breakthrough technology that happened after OpenAI raised $1 billion of venture capital. And do you think that ChatGPT would have been created, would existed, if that $1 billion would not be invested into OpenAI? In my opinion, most probably not. Maybe we would get there slowly and maybe in a different way, through different companies approaching it differently, but we wouldn't have this magical, inflection point where all of a sudden it's just like, whoa, like it actually works. So the question to you, raise your hand if you believe that ChatGPT would have existed without $1 billion invested into it. All right, we've got 4 people. It's not the very optimistic crowd, I guess. Yeah. So to me, this is actually a very, very important inflection point, because venture capital is centered around this pursuit of 100x returns. For those that are not aware with the whole phenomena, it's basically because venture capital is such a risky type of investment that the returns from that investment have to be maximized. And as a result, this whole pursuit may lead to various negative consequences. Not always, but sometimes it does. And one of the consequences is the pressure for rapid growth. So what happens is the rush development and prioritizing of speed over safety are basically the results of pushing for that 100x returns as fast as possible. And the question is, maybe we can wait a bit, Or do we really need this super intelligence right here, right now? It's a philosophical question, but also a very practical question. Because maybe ChatGPT wasn't meant to be for another 5 years. Maybe, people that raised hands here believe that we would reach that state through open source, maybe in 5 years from now. Who knows? But in Silicon Valley, there is this very strong mindset of move fast and break things. And there is also a mindset of the fact that if things break, we'll kind of fix them as fast as we broke them. And that's okay when we talk about technologies that don't affect the whole world, right? Like disruptive technologies. But when they do, maybe we can't fix things fast. And maybe we need to take things into consideration when we're building. The other phenomenon that basically influences this whole thing is the cult of immediacy. where we have these amazing technologies like Uber, Airbnb, and others, where we tap the button and magic appears, right? It's the immediacy of the experience. And we kind of want the same with AI. Like we don't want to wait another 5 years for another ChatGPT like GPT-5 to appear. We want it now. And it pushes the whole society and puts the expectations in what I believe a very rushed manner. The other point, the other consequence is the matter of disruptive technologies. Disruptive technologies are technologies that completely change the status quo. They change how we do things. Like Uber changed completely how we drive around the city. Airbnb changed how we book, places to stay when we're traveling. Amazon changed how we order things. And that's great. It's super beneficial to society. We get the benefits of adopting that technology. But when it happens very, very fast, we kind of don't have enough time to adapt to it. So I grew up when the internet was just, being built, right? And most of you probably did too. And it took me, maybe like 5 years to grow into it as it was being built. And I think I was lucky to have that experience. Because now when the kids are born into the internet, they kind of don't have coping skills. How to deal with like addiction, YouTube and all of these like algorithms that affect us. So the speed of innovation of disruptive technologies actually matters. And the speed also affects the social resistance, because when disruptive technologies happen, they change the job market. And I'm not here to say that we should not replace jobs. Like some things will eventually happen in a natural way, but are we really ready to just sit on the couch and do nothing if our job is taken away? If there's no foundation to retrain people and prepare them for this shift, maybe we should not push for it as fast. Maybe we should dedicate more time into thinking around this structure. So, joke is jobs to be done, framework, jobs to be gone. That's going to be the reality in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's already happening. A lot of people, like copywriters that used to write articles, are already replaced by ChatGPT because it's good enough. Soon, illustrators, designers are going to face the similar thing. Are we ready for that? Have we prepared the whole generation of the workforce to adapt to that? We should think more about these questions. And of course, the example that I usually show is the one of self-driving car being burnt in the center of San Francisco. And the reason why it happened is because people actually don't like these things. You would imagine that people would be happy about self-driving cars, but a lot of them hate them. And they take every opportunity to kind of like do this. And thankfully it doesn't happen every day, but sometimes it does. And the reason is not because we don't like innovation. It's because these things are being rolled out super fast into our society that is not yet ready for these things. And it's going to happen very fast in very different part of the world where we're going to see that social resistance happening. The third component is the focus on scalability and the mindset of winner takes all, which is the ideal scenario for venture capital. Ideal investment is the one that wins the entire market and just dominates the market. And it's kind of like what we see with the big tech right now, where the majority of things are being done by big tech, which is not a bad thing if it's not, monopolized. Currently, it's a very shaky balance, and we should think more about how these disruptive technologies are controlled by, big corporations or the smaller, companies that monopolize specific technology. There's a lot of current conversation about the open source versus the closed source, and these conversations have to take priority, in my opinion. The other aspect, I keep joking that AGI means average general intelligence, Because there's a lot of conversation in Silicon Valley about, hey, let's just replace the median human, the average human. And what does it really mean? Like, do you guys know any average human? Like, Ilya, you know some? Oh, you are. Yeah, and it's funny because I don't think that any of us can identify anyone like an average human. We're all amazing at some specific thing, and we should celebrate that instead of trying to create AI that just, removes the human aspect from things. So that's also something that I call the averagization of the society. And the other aspect of averagization is the neglection. When we try to create the average model that kind of fits everyone and saves us all, we naturally neglect specific things. And it's a very dangerous area that we are not talking enough about, because if we take the current approach of English-centric AI, and I wrote a little article about this maybe not a little because it's actually super long, but you can find the link in the Luma page. But I tried to explain why English-centric AI is not a good thing. It's not enough for us as humanity to actually be productive, to be good with dealing with the problems of the world. Because when you converge to the same type of thinking, you lose creativity. You lose different ways of approaching problems. And we don't want that. We need the unique wisdom of different people from different parts of the world, because that's what makes us human. The unintended consequences of technology and language as a technology is a perfect showcase how cultures disappear. So this example is actually a very sad trajectory of Irish language disappearing almost completely in 200 years. Like completely. And the majority of the last disappearances were simply because of the utility. There was no utility to speak Irish, and you actually couldn't do business, you couldn't do partnerships, because no one spoke Irish anymore. So it's a very, very dangerous area where if you don't pay attention, AI can become that acceleration of the erasure of the things in the niches. Because niches typically are not very interesting for venture capital, because there is not enough money. There's not enough money, in Ukraine to build Ukrainian LLM or Ukrainian AI. There's not enough money in Georgia or Armenia or those small countries where there's 5 million speakers. But don't they deserve the same amazing opportunities and the amazing technologies that we in Silicon Valley have? I think we should talk more about that. And it's not just, Ireland or Ukraine. There is almost 1 million people here in Japan that speak other languages. So it was also a discovery for me. I didn't know about Okinawan language, about different variations of those island languages, but there's literally Shima Kutuba, a family of languages that is spoken there, and obviously it's not being represented in any form in current AI tools. What does it mean? It means that in a generation from now, if AI tools are not built with the inclusion of those languages, they will just be gone. Because kids will be taught by ChatGPTs and AI tutors, and no one will remember those languages, that unique wisdom, that unique culture, everything around it. So I actually came back from Okinawa, and I met with a revitalization center for Okinawan languages, and they're doing amazing work with actually training teachers of the native language to try to produce more native speakers. And we talked about how technology can help with that, because you can scale these efforts with technology. You can create these type of interactive experiences. You can create low-resource language translation tools. You can create tutors. You can create tools to learn more about the stories, folklore, local traditions, local religious traditions All of these things that make the culture different can be incorporated in AI if there is enough incentive or support to make that happen, which is a big challenge. And I'm passionate about this as a challenge, and that's why we actually created this International Alliance for Inclusion and Accessibility in AI, because we truly believe that these languages, these cultures around the world have to be preserved and included in the current AI race. So, we will kick off the project of revitalization of the Okinawan languages. If any of you have some connections or potential partnerships that can be beneficial to that, I will gladly receive any introductions, because these kinds of projects are really, really, really hard to pull off. And unless there's passionate people that are willing to, do crazy things in a good way, these things won't happen. So with that, obviously there is way more things that I want to talk about, but I would love to have these conversations as a follow-up. Obviously there is way more things that I want to talk about, but I would love to have these conversations as a follow-up. I would love to do a quick Q&A, and basically, if you're shy, you can submit the question through the Google form. If you're not shy, feel free to raise your hand and ask the question.
Thanks. Hey, so you mentioned that AI companies or people are moving to Japan, and you mentioned some of the reasons, but can you be more specific about some of the trends that you're seeing in that direction?
So we'll dig more into that in the next panel. From my perspective, I would say that it's like these early signals of one company or another company opening an office, getting investment from local funds. All of these things are adding up, and I think the last 6 months has been an uptick trajectory of these things, and in the next 6 months we're going to see even more. Just last week, Andreessen Horowitz, I think last week, announced that they're going to open an office here, which is a major, Silicon Valley investor. And if they're going here, means that the others will follow. Because this is how typically venture capital works. They kind of like the wisdom of the crowd exists there. If one big thing happens, every other small fund is following. So these trends will continue.
You mentioned the move fast and break things. If you want to prevent that, how do you do it on a global scale without crippling one country and letting another country get ahead? Kind of classic question.
Yeah, it's a challenging question because, I was interviewed a couple of months ago by Business Insider, and the question was on the AI regulation, all right, because it's a very hot topic. European Union is doing a lot of things to regulate AI, which is controversial because in a way they stop the innovation because it becomes so hard to comply. Like for example, the recent Facebook models are not released in Europe because they can't comply with those rules, which is, it has good and bad around it, but definitely slows down the innovation, to your point. In US, there is ongoing conversation. Should we regulate AI and how? And the reality is no one knows how to regulate AI. And if you just stop it, then maybe the other countries that don't have good intentions win over. And when in that interview, I gave the example that malicious actors don't really care about AI regulation because you can't regulate malicious actors. They just don't care. So we have to do the regulations through what I call enablement. The governments should pay companies money to care about the responsible AI. They should basically motivate the companies to do benchmarks, to do safety verifications. Right now, there's nothing like that. There's no one that tells the company, hey, if you care about social impact, you'll get some bonuses or some tax credits or something. Maybe in Japan there's some programs like that already, but in US that's not a thing. And I believe that's the only way to fix the move fast and break things by actually encouraging building the right things. Does it make sense? All right, we can have the follow-up conversation around. Anyone else?
It's about the same topic, but how do you think about one country or one regions becoming like more ethical, while others wouldn't be, and they will produce more advanced software, AI software, and which actually going to dominate the world? That's kind of like foreseeable as well. So like that's kind of like dilemma that I'm kind of having regarding to this topic.
I think it's an interesting question from the perspective of different countries having different objectives. I was really surprised when I got into the social impact world around 5 years ago now, I think, when I learned that Latin America, South America, was way ahead from the United States in terms of thinking about ESG, corporate social responsibility, and all of these things. So I think we can learn from different countries, having different perspectives on things. And in terms of creating the software that wins over the world, I personally don't think that there's going to be one AGI that will save us all. Because it's virtually impossible to create a model that fits everything. Because LLMs work as generalization machines. Statistically speaking, they basically, generalize to everything that you absorb. And it's still very biased. So the more English data you have, the more biased it is towards English. So creating that English model that all of a sudden is perfect in Japan, that's not going to be a thing. I've tested GPT-4o, which is like actually really good with multilinguality. It still doesn't know some things about Japan or Ukraine or Arabic world. It's fascinating because that's basically, it showcases that it's possible by design to create one thing that just wins it over.
I have a question. Made in Japan means the highest quality in the world. How can we bring that quality, precision to AI products that we are all building?
I think this is something we can learn as people from other countries, right? Mark here also lives in Silicon Valley and came here as one of the companies to actually do business in Japan. So I'm telling you, it's happening. He's the one of the examples here. I think we can learn from that brand of Japanese technology, and this is the unfair advantage that Japan has to export that kind of like brand. So I don't really have a solution, but I think we need to.
So I think like AI is similar to industrial revolution. So at that time, like capitalists, of course, they're happy they can make more money, but like normal people's like they're taking our jobs, and because of it, like there is some inequality issues. And I think maybe if we have like AI, like and like as these people, like it takes some people jobs, so maybe people can have negative views. So maybe especially in the US, and it can increase inequality. So how AI can maybe solve inequality issues. And second one, because of like industrial revolution, we have like some revolution in Russia. So there could be like some kind of negative, like other intellectuals. So like promotion like communism, so maybe like how we can like, I don't know, resolve this issue like inequality.
I think it's actually already happening in terms of AI creating more inequality. You can see that from companies that are successfully adopting AI becoming super productive, right? And we see a lot of layoffs happening in Silicon Valley. Not sure if it's a thing here in Japan, probably not. But in the last year, we've observed a lot of these like shadow layoffs, which is basically, they're not public, but companies are trimming the people that are slowly but surely getting automated. And that inequality basically means that the company is able to produce more, and the stock beneficiaries are benefiting, but the rest of people are not really benefiting from that trend. That's one of the examples. The other example is people that know how to use AI, know how to prompt, are getting things like in a much faster manner. Like it's similar to how how people had to learn how to Google, right? It's a thing. Like some people don't know how to Google and they can't find the information. And sure, like as we grow as a society, more people are learning how to do it. But Google was easy compared to prompting and compared to talking with, ChatGPTs, because there's an art like prompt engineering, and people that are figuring this out are getting things in a 10x manner. They're working faster, they're doing things faster, and that's why sometimes I tell people when I go to the events where normal people kind of hang out, that, don't do AI, and they tell me like, hey, so you're the guy that is taking our jobs, and I'm like, well, not really, but it's happening, right? So I tell them that they should not worry about AI taking jobs, but about other people taking their jobs because they're 10x more efficient. So all of a sudden, when, for example, you're a teacher, and we used to have 100 teachers in a school, and then boom, you can have 10 teachers that are as productive and can do the same amount of work. What do you do with the rest 90 people? The current solution is to fire them, but that's not really a good solution if you think about it. How about we create a new type of education system where we can have 100 of those productive people and we can actually equalize the access to education. So it's about creation of new models that will take time. And this is the point of me talking about, like, are we prepared to roll out these things, or should we actually start thinking about like how to build the foundation for all these amazing technologies? All right, thank you. One more question? Yeah. And then we'll shift into the panel.
Hello. You mentioned about like this AI for good to give incentive to companies to be more responsible and working from the ground up. But from this point of view, I'm pretty skeptic because like companies, the greatest objective is to make money. So I would ask, like, you mentioned your project with Okinawa and like Japan languages. In this case, I see, for example, that people that usually don't speak a major language, usually they come from like very isolated backgrounds, so poor backgrounds. So most of the minor languages are oral languages, so they will not really interface with these devices. And in the modern world, they will probably be older people. So in this case, like I completely understand the need to preserve languages and that globalization may lead to this very efficient use of 1 or 2 or 3, 4 major languages. But at the same time, like I would ask you, like in this area for good, and this project definitely like preserves good, is good for society because it includes everyone. Like, where is the money in this kind of approach? Because I see that the customer doesn't change, and I cannot see like how this investment would benefit like business-wise.
Yeah, where's the money is the key question, for sure. And it's a tricky question because I totally agree with you. There's no incentive for business to do this from the perspective of just like revenue optimization, profit optimization. The trick here is that we need to think long term. We need to understand as a society that language is not just a tool for efficient communication, as you said. Like, yeah, sure, maybe for globalization, being efficient and speaking one language is a good thing, but language is way more than an efficient tool. It's how we see the world. It's how we treat each other. The example of Japanese culture, there's a lot of things that are interconnected with the language. Some words that don't exist in English language that represent certain phenomena, or how you treat people, or like how you describe certain things. And if we lose all of these things, we will actually lose the capability to innovate. And at the end, we'll definitely stagnate as a society. Simply because we'll homogenize, we'll average out to having the same ideas and no innovative creative thought. Because Silicon Valley, for example, as a phenomenon, it's the place where people from all over the world come and somehow create this magical innovation. And those are not the same kind of people. They don't speak the same language. They don't think the same way. They come from different countries. Like I came from Ukraine. My friend came from Iran or from China or from Japan, and we approach problems differently. So I think as a society, we need to bridge the long-term thinking to the short-term revenue profit optimization. I don't think we're there, actually. You're right. Like the money is not there. With our alliance, our goal is to get big tech like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and others to actually invest into these things so they can expand their models with that wisdom. Because if you think about the AGI, it would be beneficial for it to know certain things from other cultures. Because maybe someday someone asks for a tip how to solve something, and then some wisdom from Okinawan, religious traditions comes up in a way that you don't really, you can't trace it down to that specific book or specific story, but it helps that person think differently. In the same way that sometimes you speak to some friend and they tell you some, kind of like human wisdom, right, from their stories, and you're like, that makes sense. Let me approach that problem differently. So I think we're not there yet, to your question, but we have to figure it out. All right, with that, I'll wrap it up, and we'll get our panelists to the stage and the chairs. So thank you so much for listening through a very long keynote, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And we'll switch to the panel.
Thank you so much for watching our video podcast today. We hope our story will help your future and career. Talk soon. Bye bye.